The morning started like any other day for Emperor Vexthon of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. He sat in his golden throne room, reviewing reports from across his vast domain. 3,000 years of expansion had brought 847 star systems under his rule. Every species they encountered had either surrendered quickly or been crushed completely. His aide, a thin creature with purple skin and 4 arms, approached the throne with nervous steps. "Your Majesty, our scouts have found something interesting." Vexthon looked up from his reports. His red eyes glowed with mild interest. "Another primitive world wanting to join our empire?" "Not exactly, sir. They seem to have basic space travel, but they refuse to acknowledge our authority." The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Refuse? How amusing. Show me this brave little world." The aide activated a hologram in the center of the throne room. A small blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly. Several space stations orbited around it, and small ships moved between them. "They call themselves humans, Your Majesty. Their planet is named Earth. Our scouts estimate their technology is about 500 years behind ours." Vexthon studied the image. The planet looked peaceful enough. Small cities dotted the surface, connected by thin lines of light. Nothing impressive. Nothing that suggested they could challenge the mighty Zephyrian Empire. "Have we made the usual offer?" the Emperor asked. "Yes, sir. Complete surrender in exchange for being allowed to live as servants." They sent back a message saying they politely decline. Politely decline? Vexthon stood up from his throne. His massive frame cast a shadow across the room. "No one declines the Empire. Send the 47th Conquest Fleet. A small demonstration should change their minds." The aide bowed deeply. "At once, Your Majesty. Fleet Commander Zektar will lead 200 ships to their system." Within hours, the 47th Fleet gathered at the edge of Zephyrian space. Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet form up. 200 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. It was more firepower than most worlds had ever seen. Zektar had conquered 12 worlds in his career. This would be his 13th and probably the easiest. The humans had maybe 50 ships total, all of them tiny compared to his massive vessels. "Jump to their system," he ordered. "Let's end this quickly." The fleet jumped through space, covering thousands of light years in seconds. They appeared at the edge of the human solar system like a wall of death. The humans would see them coming and have maybe an hour to surrender. Zektar expected immediate panic. Usually primitive species started sending desperate surrender messages the moment they saw a Zephyrian fleet. Instead, his communications officer looked confused. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans." "Already? Good. Put their surrender on screen." The main screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared wearing a simple uniform. She had short gray hair and calm eyes. She sat behind a metal desk in what looked like a command center. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Grid," she said in a steady voice. "We've received your Empire's generous offer of slavery. We respectfully decline." Zektar blinked in surprise. "Decline? Do you understand what you're facing? We have 200 warships. You have maybe 50 small vessels." Admiral Chen smiled slightly. "We understand perfectly, Commander. We've been watching your empire expand for quite some time. We know exactly what you're capable of. Then you know resistance is pointless. Surrender now and your people will be treated well as servants. I'm afraid that's not acceptable. We prefer our freedom." Zektar felt anger rising in his chest. "Then you choose death. We will destroy every ship you have, then burn your cities from orbit." "You're welcome to try," Admiral Chen said. Then the transmission ended. Zektar stared at the blank screen. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever spoken to him like that. Usually, primitive species begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. This human had been completely calm, as if facing certain death meant nothing to her. "Sir?" his tactical officer asked. "Should we begin the attack?" "Yes. Show them what happens when someone defies the Empire." The Zephyrian fleet moved forward. As they approached Earth, human ships began appearing. They were much smaller than Zektar expected, but there were more of them than his scouts had reported. Maybe 100 vessels, still outnumbered 2-1. The human ships moved strangely. Instead of forming battle lines like civilized species, they scattered in all directions. Some dove toward nearby asteroids. Others accelerated at impossible speeds toward the Zephyrian fleet. "Their ships are fast," the tactical officer noted. "Speed won't save them from our firepower. Begin bombardment." The Zephyrian ships opened fire. Beams of energy lanced out toward the human vessels, but the humans weren't where the beams went. They twisted and turned with impossible grace, dodging between shots that should have vaporized them. How are they moving like that? Zektar demanded. Unknown, sir. Their acceleration rates are beyond what most organic life can survive. A human ship suddenly appeared next to one of Zektar's dreadnoughts. It fired a volley of missiles that punched through the larger ship's shields and exploded inside the hull. The dreadnought broke apart in a ball of fire. Impossible, Zektar shouted. Their weapons are too primitive to penetrate our shields. Sir, they're not using energy weapons. Those are physical projectiles. Moving at incredible speeds, more human ships attacked. They moved through the Zephyrian formation like dancers, appearing from behind asteroids and space debris. Every attack was precise, targeting weak points in the larger ship's defenses. The battle that should have lasted minutes stretched on for hours. The humans fought with a style Zektar had never seen. They didn't try to overpower the Zephyrian ships. Instead, they used speed and cunning, striking where the enemy was weakest and disappearing before return fire could reach them. Worse, the humans seemed to learn from every exchange. Early in the battle, Zektar's ships managed to destroy several human vessels, but as the fight continued, human tactics improved. They avoided the same mistakes twice. Sir, we've lost 40 ships, the tactical officer reported. The humans have lost maybe 15. Zektar couldn't believe it. His advanced fleet was losing to primitive humans flying ships that looked like they were built in someone's garage. Pull back to long range. We'll bombard them from a distance, but the humans didn't let them retreat easily. They pursued the withdrawing Zephyrian ships, harassing them with hit-and-run attacks. Every time Zektar tried to form a defensive line, human ships would appear from unexpected angles. Finally, his fleet managed to reach a safe distance. Zektar looked at his tactical display with growing horror. He had started with 200 ships. Now he had maybe 160 left. The humans still had most of their fleet intact. Send a message to the Emperor, Zektar ordered. Tell him we need reinforcements. These humans are not what we expected. What should I tell him about them, sir? Zektar watched as human ships regrouped near their planet. They moved with perfect coordination, as if sharing a single mind. In all his years of conquest, he had never faced an enemy like this. Tell him they're dangerous, he said quietly. More dangerous than anything we've ever encountered. Emperor Vexthon read Commander Zektar's report 3 times before he believed it. 40 ships lost to a primitive species. It was impossible. The 47th Fleet had conquered entire star systems with fewer losses. Dangerous? The Emperor muttered to himself. They're barely out of their Stone Age. His aide stood nearby, waiting for orders. Your Majesty, should we send reinforcements? Vexthon's pride burned hot in his chest. No primitive world had ever humiliated his empire like this. If word spread that humans had defeated a Zephyrian fleet, other species might start getting ideas about rebellion. Send the 12th Imperial Armada, he commanded. 800 ships under War Marshal Thexmore. I want this human problem solved permanently. The 12th Armada, sir. That's our 3rd largest battle force. These humans got lucky against one small fleet. They won't stand against a real military force. 3 days later, War Marshal Thexmore's massive fleet jumped into the human solar system. Unlike Commander Zektar, Thexmore was a veteran of 23 planetary conquests. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed spacefaring civilizations, and broken the spirit of countless species. He expected to find Zektar's remaining ships in formation, waiting for reinforcements. Instead, his sensors showed debris fields and the scattered remains of what had once been Zephyrian dreadnoughts. Where's the 47th Fleet? Thexmore asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. We're detecting maybe 30 Zephyrian ships hiding behind one of the outer planets. The rest appear to have been destroyed. Thexmore felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had completely destroyed most of Zektar's fleet in just 3 days. How was that possible? Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans. The same calm woman appeared on the main screen. Admiral Chen looked exactly as she had in Zektar's recordings, completely unafraid despite facing 800 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Welcome back, she said pleasantly. I assume you're here about the same surrender offer? I am War Marshal Thexmore of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately or we will destroy your entire world. I'm afraid our position hasn't changed, Marshal. We still prefer our freedom. Thexmore studied the human woman. She showed no fear, no desperation. If anything, she seemed almost amused. You destroyed one small fleet through luck and trickery. You face 800 ships now. There is no escape. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. You're right that this is a larger force. We've been studying your technology since our last encounter. Thank you for the educational materials, by the way. Educational materials? The wreckage from your previous fleet. Very informative. We've made some improvements to our own ships based on what we learned. Thexmore's blood ran cold. Species that could reverse engineer Zephyrian technology in days were not primitive. They were something else entirely. No matter what tricks you've learned, you cannot defeat 800 ships. Perhaps not, Admiral Chen agreed. But we're willing to try. The transmission ended. Thexmore stared at the blank screen, feeling uneasy. Something about this situation felt wrong. The humans were too calm, too confident. Begin the attack, he ordered. Full assault. I want their fleet destroyed within the hour. The 12th Armada moved forward in perfect formation. 800 ships spread across space like a steel wall of death. No force in the galaxy could stand against them. Human ships appeared to meet them, but something was different. There were more of them than before, and they looked changed. The basic designs were the same. But Thexmore could see new weapons, improved armor, and strange additions that looked suspiciously like modified Zephyrian technology. How many ships are they fielding? He asked. Roughly 200, sir. Still outnumbered 4-1. But as the battle began, Thexmore realized numbers didn't tell the whole story. The human ships moved differently than before. They were faster, more agile, and their weapons hit harder, much harder. A group of human fighters dove through his formation, firing projectiles that punched clean through Zephyrian shields. But these weren't the simple kinetic weapons from the previous battle. These projectiles moved at near light speed and contained explosive cores that detonated inside target ships. They've weaponized our own shield penetration technology. His science. Officer reported in disbelief. Worse, the humans fought with perfect coordination. Every ship seemed to know exactly what every other ship was doing. They flowed around Zephyrian formations like water, striking at weak points and disappearing before counterattacks could reach them. Thexmore watched in growing horror as his beautiful formation fell apart. Human ships appeared from impossible angles using asteroids and space debris as cover. They had turned the entire solar system into a weapon against him. Sir, they're not just using our technology, the tactical officer reported. They're using it better than we do. That was the moment Thexmore realized the truth. The humans weren't just learning from captured technology. They were improving it, taking Zephyrian designs and making them more efficient, more deadly. A human cruiser appeared next to his flagship, moving faster than any ship that size should be able to move. It fired a single shot that somehow passed through his shields without triggering them. The blast struck his engine room, crippling his ship. How did they do that? Thexmore demanded. They're modulating their weapons to match our shield frequencies, sir. They know our defensive systems better than we do. The battle raged for 6 hours. Thexmore threw everything he had at the human fleet, but it was like fighting smoke. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking from unexpected directions and vanishing before his ships could respond. His 800 ships became 700, then 600. The humans lost ships too, but nowhere near as many. And every time a human ship was destroyed, the others seemed to learn something new. They're not just fighting us, Thexmore whispered to himself. They're studying us, his science officer overheard. Sir, our analysis suggests they're treating this entire battle as a learning exercise. Every engagement provides them with new data about our capabilities. You mean they're using us as test subjects? In a sense, yes, sir. Thexmore felt sick. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were using his fleet as a training ground, learning everything they could about Zephyrian military capabilities. As his ship count dropped below 400, Thexmore made a desperate decision. All ships retreat to long range. Prepare for orbital bombardment. If we can't defeat their fleet, we'll destroy their planet. But the humans had anticipated this move. As his ships tried to pull back, human vessels emerged from hiding places throughout the system. They had been waiting, watching, learning his tactics. The retreat became a rout. Human ships harassed his fleeing vessels, picking off stragglers and crippled ships. By the time Thexmore reached minimum safe distance, he had fewer than 200 ships left. Status report, he ordered wearily. 637 ships lost or disabled, sir. The humans still have approximately 150 vessels operational. Thexmore stared at the tactical display. In one battle, the humans had destroyed more Zephyrian ships than some species managed in entire wars. "Open a channel to the Empire," he said quietly. "Yes, sir?" Thexmore looked into the communication recorder, knowing this would be his final report. "Your Majesty, the human threat is beyond anything we've encountered. They don't just fight to win. They fight to learn. Every ship we lose teaches them something new. Every tactic we use, they counter and improve upon." He paused, watching human ships regrouping near their planet. "They moved with deadly precision, no wasted motion. They're not just warriors, Your Majesty. They're predators who think. I respectfully recommend we consider negotiation rather than continued military action." The transmission sent, Thexmore slumped in his command chair. In 23 campaigns he had never tasted defeat. Now a species he had dismissed as primitive had taught him the bitter taste of failure. Outside his viewports, human ships patrolled their system like sharks in bloody water, waiting, learning, growing stronger with every passing moment. Emperor Vexthon watched War Marshal Thexmore's final transmission in stunned silence. 600 ships lost, his most experienced commander defeated by primitive humans. It was impossible, yet the evidence floated in space around Earth in the form of twisted metal and debris. "Predators who think," the Emperor repeated quietly. The phrase sent chills through his massive frame. His aide approached the throne with nervous steps. "Your Majesty, what are your orders?" Vexthon stood up slowly, his red eyes burning with rage and something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like fear. "Recall all available fleets. I want every ship we can spare assembled at the home world. Sir, that would mean pulling forces from our border worlds. Some systems might rebel. Let them try. If these humans are as dangerous as Thexmore claims, they're a threat to the entire Empire. We end this now, with overwhelming force." Within 2 weeks, the largest fleet in Zephyrian history assembled in their home system. 3,000 ships representing 60% of the Empire's total military might. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets, carriers holding thousands of fighters, and the crown jewel of the Imperial Navy, the super dreadnought Infinite Dominion, the Emperor's own flagship. Vexthon stood on the bridge of his massive ship, looking out at the greatest military force ever assembled. No civilization had ever faced such overwhelming power. The humans would surrender or be reduced to radioactive ash. "Begin the jump," he commanded. 3,000 ships vanished from Zephyrian space and reappeared at the edge of the human solar system. The Emperor expected to see fortifications, desperate defensive preparations, maybe even evacuation ships fleeing the doomed world. Instead, he found the same small human fleet that had destroyed 2 of his armadas, maybe 200 ships tiny compared to his massive force. They waited calmly near Earth as if 3,000 enemy vessels meant nothing to them. "That's it?" Vexthon asked in disbelief. "That's their entire defense?" "Sensors confirm approximately 200 human vessels, Your Majesty. Same configuration as previous encounters, and how's that possible? Where are their reinforcements? Their defense platforms? Their evacuation fleets?" His tactical officer checked the displays again. "Unknown, sir. The system appears to be defended by the same force that defeated our previous fleets." A transmission request arrived from the human ships. Emperor Vexthon accepted it, expecting to finally hear words of surrender. Admiral Chen appeared on the main screen, sitting calmly in her command center. She looked exactly the same as in previous recordings, showing no sign of stress or fear, despite facing impossible odds. "Your Majesty," she said politely, "an honor to meet you personally. Admiral Chen, I presume. You've caused my empire considerable embarrassment. That wasn't our intention. We simply defended ourselves." Vexthon leaned forward in his command throne. "You face 3,000 ships, the greatest military force ever assembled. Even you cannot believe you can resist such overwhelming power?" Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. "It is indeed an impressive fleet. May I ask why you brought so many ships to deal with our small force? Your small force has destroyed over 800 of my vessels." "True, but we're curious about something, Your Majesty. You keep calling us a military force." Vexthon blinked in confusion. "You're not a military force?" "Oh no, sir. You've been fighting our Coast Guard." The words hit the Emperor like a physical blow. Coast Guard? A defensive patrol force? He had committed the majority of his empire's military might against what amounted to system police? "Impossible," he whispered. "I understand your confusion," Admiral Chen continued calmly. "Most species organize differently than we do. What you've been fighting is our local defense grid. They handle pirates, smugglers, that sort of thing. Then where is your real military? Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time the Emperor saw something frightening in her eyes. Busy. The transmission ended. Vexton stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. If this wasn't the human military, then where were their actual armed forces? Your Majesty. His communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving priority messages from across the Empire. What kind of messages? Reports of unknown ships appearing in our systems. Human ships, sir. Vexton felt his blood turn to ice. Show me. The main screen filled with images from across his empire. Human fleets appearing at Zephyrian worlds, not attacking, but simply present. Waiting. The ships were different from the ones defending Earth. Larger, more heavily armed, clearly military vessels. How many systems? He asked quietly. 47 so far, sir. Major worlds, industrial centers, military bases. In every case, human forces appeared without warning and took position outside our defenses. The Emperor's mind reeled. While he had been focused on Earth, human forces had somehow surrounded his most important worlds. But how? How had they moved so quickly? How had they known which systems to target? Your Majesty, we are receiving another transmission from Admiral Chen. The human woman reappeared on screen, still sitting calmly at her desk. Behind her, Vexton could see displays showing what appeared to be tactical information about Zephyrian systems. I thought you might have questions, she said pleasantly. How? Was all Vexton could manage. We've been watching your empire for quite some time, Your Majesty, studying your expansion patterns, your military tactics, your important systems. When your first fleet arrived, we backtraced their jump signatures to find their point of origin. But the travel time alone, yes, it should have taken months to reach our core worlds. Fortunately, we have some advantages in faster-than-light travel. One benefit of starting from scratch rather than relying on old technology. Vexton realized with growing horror that humanity's space travel was more advanced than his own. While Zephyrian ships could jump between systems, human vessels could apparently do it faster and more efficiently. What do you want? He asked. The same thing we've wanted all along. To be left alone. You're welcome to your empire, Your Majesty. But we're not interested in joining it. You could have simply said that from the beginning. Admiral Chen shook her head. With respect, sir, we did. Multiple times. Your response was to send fleets to conquer us. The Emperor looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their displays in shock, watching reports of human forces throughout the Empire. 3,000 years of expansion, and humans had outmaneuvered them completely. You have our world surrounded, he said. We have military assets positioned near your major systems, yes. Not to conquer them, but to demonstrate that we're capable of defending ourselves if necessary. What happens now? That depends on you, Your Majesty. We have no interest in ruling your empire or harming your people, but we also won't allow you to attack neutral worlds like Earth. Vexton studied the human admiral. She spoke of positioning fleets throughout his empire, as casually as discussing the weather. The casual display of power was more intimidating than any threat. You're offering terms? We're offering a choice. You can continue trying to conquer us, which hasn't worked well so far, or we can discuss a different arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Peace. You maintain your empire, but you stop expanding through conquest. We share some technological innovations, you share some of your cultural and administrative knowledge. Everyone benefits, the Emperor sat back in his throne. After 3,000 years of conquest, humans were offering him partnership instead of surrender or destruction. And if I refuse? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Then we'll have to reconsider our position on non-interference. Vexton understood the implied threat. Human forces were already positioned throughout his empire. If they chose to attack, they could cripple his civilization before he could respond. I need time to consider. Of course. Take all the time you need, Your Majesty. We'll wait. The transmission ended, leaving the Emperor alone with his thoughts and the terrible realization that his empire was no longer the dominant power in the galaxy. Emperor Vexton paced his private chambers aboard the Infinite Dominion, his mind churning with impossible decisions. Through the massive viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel, seemingly peaceful despite the 3,000 warships aimed at it. Reports continued flooding in from across his empire. Human fleets had appeared at 47 major systems, but they weren't attacking. They simply waited. A constant reminder that his empire was no longer secure. "Your Majesty." His aide's voice came through the intercom. "The War Council is assembled." Vexthon straightened his ceremonial robes and walked to the council chamber. His top military commanders sat around a circular table, their faces grim. Maps and tactical displays showed the current situation across the empire. War Marshal Kethvor, commander of the Home Defense Fleet, stood as the Emperor entered. "Your Majesty, we've analyzed the human positions. They've placed forces at every major industrial world, our primary military academies, and our 3 largest shipyards. Can we dislodge them?" "Unknown, sir. Each human fleet is smaller than our local defenses, but—" Kethvor hesitated. "Speak freely, Marshal." "Based on previous encounters, sir, engaging them might result in catastrophic losses. These humans learn from every battle. Attack them, and they'll adapt to our tactics in real time." Admiral Zextara, the Empire's chief strategist, activated a holographic display. "Your Majesty, we've studied their ship movements. The speed at which they deployed suggests travel times we thought impossible. Their logistics capabilities are beyond our understanding." Vexthon studied the display. Red dots marked human positions throughout his empire, like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. "How did they move so many ships so quickly?" "We believe they've been planning this for years, possibly decades," Zextara replied. "While we saw them as primitive, they were studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for exactly this scenario." The Emperor felt a chill. "You're saying they've been planning to fight us since before we made contact?" "The evidence suggests they've been aware of our empire's expansion patterns for quite some time. They may have been preparing for this conflict before we even knew they existed." War Marshal Thexmore, still recovering from his defeat at Earth, spoke up. "Your Majesty, I fought these humans directly. They don't just react to threats, they anticipate them. Every move we made, they had already planned a counter." Vexthon slumped into his chair. "Are you telling me we've been outmaneuvered by a species we discovered 2 weeks ago?" "Not discovered, sir," Zextara corrected gently. "They allowed us to find them. The timing was their choice, not ours." The implication hit the Emperor like a hammer blow. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by first contact. They had initiated it, choosing when and how to reveal themselves to his empire. "Why?" he asked. "Why reveal themselves at all?" "Unknown, sir. But their Admiral Chen mentioned something about neutral worlds. Perhaps they were concerned about our expansion reaching other systems they consider important." A junior officer entered the chamber and whispered urgently to Kethvor. The War Marshal's face went pale. "What is it?" Vexthon demanded. "Sir, we've just received intelligence from our deep space reconnaissance network. Human ships have been detected near the Andorian Republic and the Crystalline Confederacy." Vexthon's blood ran cold. Both were independent civilizations on his empire's borders, worlds he had planned to conquer within the next few years. "They're protecting other species," he realized. "The humans aren't just defending themselves. They're setting themselves up as guardians of the entire region." Admiral Zextara nodded grimly. "It appears they've taken it upon themselves to prevent further imperial expansion, Your Majesty." The Emperor stood and walked to the chamber's viewport. His magnificent fleet hung in space before him, 3,000 ships representing the pinnacle of Zephyrian military might, yet somehow it felt small and inadequate. "Options," he commanded. "We could attempt to force a decisive battle," Kethvor suggested reluctantly. "Concentrate our entire fleet against one human position and try to break their forces through sheer numbers." "Likelihood of success?" "Based on previous encounters." "Minimal, sir. They adapt too quickly. By the time we engage their main force, they'd have learned enough from our attack patterns to counter our entire strategy." "We could attempt to negotiate from a position of strength," Zextara offered. "Threaten to bombard one of their protected worlds unless they withdraw. Would that work?" "Unlikely, sir. Their response would probably be to demonstrate their own capabilities against one of our worlds. Based on their strategic positioning, they could cripple our industrial capacity before we could retaliate effectively." Vexthon closed his eyes. Every option led to disaster. "What about a fighting retreat? Pull back our forces, consolidate our core systems? That might work temporarily," Thexmore said. "But sir, these humans have shown they can outmaneuver us strategically. Give them time and they'll find ways to exploit any defensive position we establish." So our options are defeat in battle or slow strangulation? The room fell silent. Finally, Zextara spoke. There is one other possibility, Your Majesty. Which is? Accept their offer of negotiation. Not from weakness, but from pragmatism. Vexthon turned from the viewport. Explain. Sir, our empire has always expanded through conquest because we were the strongest military force in the galaxy. That's no longer true. The humans have demonstrated superior technology, strategy, and logistics. Fighting them further will only weaken us. You're suggesting surrender? I'm suggesting adaptation, sir. For 3,000 years, we've grown through conquest. Perhaps it's time to grow through cooperation instead. The Emperor studied his advisors. These were not weak beings counseling surrender. They were experienced military leaders who had conquered countless worlds. If they believed negotiation was the wisest course, the situation was even worse than he had imagined. What would we gain from cooperation with humans? Zextara activated another display showing technological comparisons. They're faster than light travel, their adaptive technologies, their strategic planning capabilities. All of these could benefit our empire enormously. And what would they gain from us? Our administrative experience, our cultural knowledge, our existing infrastructure. They may be superior warriors, but we've successfully governed hundreds of different species for millennia. That's knowledge they would need if they intend to protect multiple civilizations. Vexthon considered this. The humans had demonstrated they could defeat his military and outmaneuver his strategy. But governing a galactic empire required different skills than winning battles. Contact Admiral Chen, he commanded. Tell her I'm prepared to discuss terms. As his aide hurried to carry out the order, Vexthon remained at the viewport. His empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, home to billions of beings. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrians had been the dominant power in this region of the galaxy. That era was ending. What came next would depend on whether he was wise enough to adapt to a universe where humans existed. In the distance, Earth continued its quiet rotation, a small blue world that had changed everything. The Emperor wondered what other surprises humanity had in store for the galaxy. 3 hours later, Emperor Vexithon sat across from Admiral Chen in a conference room aboard a neutral station that the humans had somehow constructed in the empty space between their fleets. The speed at which they had built the facility was another reminder of their capabilities. Admiral Chen looked the same as always, calm and professional. But now Vexthon could see the intelligence behind her eyes, the careful calculation of someone who had planned every step of this encounter. Your Majesty, she said politely, thank you for agreeing to meet. I find myself curious about your true intentions, Admiral. You could have destroyed my empire, yet you offer negotiation instead. Chen smiled slightly. Destroying your empire would serve no purpose. Your people aren't our enemies. Your government's expansion policies were the problem. You speak as if conquest is morally wrong. Not wrong necessarily, but inefficient. You've spent 3,000 years forcing other species to join your empire. How much resistance have you faced? How many resources wasted on suppressing rebellions? Vexthon considered this. Some resistance is normal. Most species adapt to imperial rule eventually. But imagine if they had joined willingly instead. How much stronger would your empire be if every world contributed enthusiastically instead of grudgingly? The Emperor had never considered this perspective. You're suggesting voluntary association? We're suggesting that cooperation produces better results than conquest. Our analysis of your empire shows significant inefficiencies caused by resistance movements, military occupation costs, and administrative overhead from unwilling subjects. Chen activated a holographic display showing detailed economic data about the Zephyrian Empire. Vexthon stared in shock at the level of detail. The humans knew more about his empire's economics than most of his own advisors. Where did you get this information? We've been observing your expansion for 60 years, Your Majesty. Every species you've conquered, every battle you've fought, every administrative decision you've made. We study civilizations before making contact. 60 years? Vexthon felt dizzy. But your species only achieved spaceflight recently. We achieved interstellar travel 50 years before you discovered us. We've been watching, learning, preparing. The Emperor slumped in his chair. Every assumption he had made about humanity was wrong. They weren't a primitive species stumbling into galactic politics. They were sophisticated observers who had been studying his empire for decades. Why reveal yourselves now? Because your expansion was approaching systems we consider important. the Andorian Republic, the Crystalline Confederacy, several other independent worlds. We couldn't allow them to be conquered, so you decided to stop us. We decided to offer you a better alternative. Chen gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a map of local space. Human-controlled systems appeared in blue, Zephyrian systems in red, and independent worlds in green. Here's what we propose, she continued. Your empire maintains all current territory, but expansion through conquest ends. Instead, worlds can choose to join the empire voluntarily, with guaranteed rights and representation. And in exchange, we share certain technologies with you. Improved faster-than-light travel, more efficient energy systems, advanced manufacturing techniques. In return, you share your administrative expertise and cultural knowledge with us. Vexthon studied the display. What about neutral worlds? Protected. No empire, including ours, may conquer them without cause. They remain free to choose their own path. And if I refuse these terms? Chen's expression didn't change, but her voice became slightly colder. Then we'll be forced to take a more active role in regional security. The Emperor understood the threat. Human forces were already positioned throughout his empire. They could cripple his civilization whenever they chose. You're offering partnership, while holding a knife to my throat. We're offering partnership while demonstrating that we're capable of enforcing it. Would you prefer we had simply destroyed your fleets without explanation? Vexthon had to admit she had a point. What guarantees do I have that you won't simply take over my empire once you have access to our systems? None beyond our demonstrated behavior. We could have conquered your empire already if that was our goal. Instead, we're sitting here negotiating. Why? Why not simply rule the galaxy yourselves? Chen leaned back in her chair. Because ruling a galactic empire sounds like a nightmare. Do you know how much paperwork that would involve? How many different species we'd have to manage? How many rebellions we'd have to suppress? Despite everything, Vexthon found himself smiling. It is considerable work, exactly. We have no interest in governing other species. We just want to ensure that peaceful worlds aren't forced into unwilling servitude. The Emperor considered the offer. His military was outmatched, his strategy had been anticipated, and his empire was surrounded. But the humans were offering genuine partnership rather than conquest. What about my military forces? My fleets? Remain under your command naturally. We'd expect you to help patrol the neutral zones and assist with regional security, but your empire's defense remains your responsibility. And existing conquered worlds? That's between you and them. We won't interfere in internal imperial politics, but we'd encourage you to consider offering them greater autonomy. Happy subjects are more productive than resentful ones. Vexthon stood and walked to the conference room's viewport. His massive fleet hung in space nearby, but it no longer felt like a symbol of ultimate power. The humans had changed the entire balance of the galaxy in a matter of weeks. I have one question, Admiral. Yes, Your Majesty. The forces I've been fighting. You called them your Coast Guard. That's correct. Where is your actual military? Chen paused for a moment, and Vexthon saw something that might have been amusement in her eyes. Some are positioned around your major systems, as you've seen. The rest are distributed throughout human space, maintaining routine patrols and training exercises. How many ships in total? I'm not sure that information would be useful to you, Your Majesty. I would still like to know. Chen sighed. Our active fleet consists of approximately 15,000 vessels, with another 20,000 in reserve. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. Our shipbuilding capacity is substantial. Vexthon felt the room spin around him. 15,000 active ships. His entire empire had maybe 5,000 vessels total. And the forces defending Earth? 200 ships from the 3rd Coastal Defense Squadron. They handle pirates and smugglers in the outer systems. The Emperor sat down heavily. He had committed the majority of his empire's military might against what amounted to a police patrol. The humans' actual military was 7 times larger than his entire fleet. Your Majesty, Chen said gently, I hope this helps explain why we prefer negotiation to conflict. Vexthon nodded slowly. I accept your terms. Excellent. We'll have a formal treaty prepared within the week. As they shook hands in the human custom, Vexthon asked one final question. Admiral, may I ask what convinced your people to reveal themselves to us? Honestly, we were getting bored watching you slowly expand across the galaxy. We thought it might be more interesting to introduce ourselves and see what happened. The Emperor stared at her. Bored?
60 years of observation can be quite tedious, Your Majesty.
This has been much more engaging. As Vexthon returned to his ship, he realized that humanity hadn't just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. They had done it casually, almost as entertainment. 6 months later, the Terran-Zephyrian Accord was signed. The Empire remained intact but ended its expansion through conquest. Trade and cultural exchange flourished between the two civilizations. Several border worlds actually chose to join the Empire voluntarily, once guaranteed rights and representation. Emperor Vexthon sat in his palace on the Imperial homeworld, reading reports of peaceful trade missions and cultural exchanges. His empire was smaller than he had planned, but it was more prosperous and stable than ever before. His aide approached with the daily intelligence briefing. "Your Majesty, our long-range sensors have detected something interesting." "What is it?" "A large fleet of unknown ships approaching from the galactic core. They appear hostile and are demanding tribute from worlds in their path." Vexthon sighed. "Contact Admiral Chen. Tell her we may have a new security situation developing." "At once, sir." "Should I also mention that our preliminary analysis suggests their fleet consists of approximately 5,000 ships?" The Emperor smiled grimly. "Yes, include that detail. I suspect Admiral Chen will find it interesting." As he watched his aide hurry away, Vexthon reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, 5,000 hostile ships would have terrified him. Now he almost felt sorry for whoever was foolish enough to threaten the peace that humanity had established. After all, they were about to discover what the humans' actual military was capable of.